I have 4 poems, and I'm trying to get better at introducing my poems, so bear with me. So I wrote this poem for Annie Mae's Poetry Night, hosted by Jimbo Ivey and Ed Weekly, and so I wanted to get that in there. Honestly, I write a lot of poems for Poetry Night, but this one was for competition, so I thought I'd add it in. The rules were to start with because it was Tuesday, and then end with but why would I want to, and for it to be under 30 lines. And so I kind of threw together a poem I'd been wanting to write, where it was about spending too much time in one's own head. And I also wanted to throw in a gazing ball and Arabic poetry in there. So. It's called The Coming Flood. Because it was Tuesday, and the light in this bar is like the darkness in my skull, where occasionally I brood and watch the lights of cars arc through my eyes across the vast dome of the bones in my cranium, a place like some ancient temple. Here is the altar of my dreams, given offerings of so much whiskey, that I can only wait for a spiritual moment when grief comes over me suddenly, and I'm walking through a desert, and I'm walking through a forest, and I'm walking through my neighbor's backyard to find a gazing ball, a blue beacon filled with sky of rushing clouds. And in it I see our fathers, their souls trapped in this hollow sphere of gazing intently at me. So I tell them of my grievances against my body, of my failings that I know not how to tell you. And I tell them of the time I sat in this bar, of the time I lost every quarter of Arabic poetry, of the time that each drink replaced the watchwork of my chest with a flood pushing against the dam of my eyes. And I think I could tell you, I could tell about this flood, about how it is coming, about what our fathers told us to do. But why would I want to? This poem is one of the most scattered I've written lately. I wrote it, I was going to read it for Brian McCarty, who did not come because he was engaged in other affairs apparently. But I've been listening to a song, so I wanted it to be somewhat scattered. I've been listening to a song, The Great Fire by a band called Future Islands that Dan Hornsby, who also could not come because his band's playing tomorrow night and he had to do band stuff, introduced me to. So some of the song leaks in and some offhand references to Louis Buñuel films, Liège d'Or and Un Chien Andalou, which he also directed with Salvador Dali. It's called Fire, Beach, Heartbreak, Experimental Film. On this beach we lay, but not on a beach, and away with the we, for now is the razor cutting an eye, and now is the father with a gun to the sky, and now is a young boy getting ready to die. This beach is at sunset, and there is no sun. This beach is not Dover, but I feel it was, and I wish for a we sat down by the sea. But there is only fire, there is only me, and by this lonely shore I will rhyme no more. The sand is turned gray, the logs are quicksilver, they want to dance, ache, 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 flickers on my skin. A great flame is here alone. I do not know what a dog is, knowing. I too much fight the what, ownership, right of who. Cut to somewhere else, anywhere else. Music is heroin screaming through the veins. Yeah, the sound of that. Actors, they have been foretold. They are angels descending that no one believes in. Cut to the day we were born, your hospital, my hospital. Cut to a clown crying in a bed of bananas. Cut to a tornado in Kansas, a tsunami in the Philippines, the ghettos of Brazil. Roll credits at the beginning of the film, although it's the end. This poem is inspired by Charles Simic. I've been obsessed with the poem Butcher Shop lately, about looking at a butcher shop window and slowly realizing the violence in the world and our implication in this violence. I love the rising structure towards the sublime and realization so much that I wanted to emulate it as an exercise, but using a different theme. So if it sounds familiar to any Charles Simic fans, it's because I'm using the exact same structure in a cheap way. Just so you know. It's called At My Desk for Charles Simic. When working long hours sitting there, I tend to stop and think at my desk. There is a pin close to my hand, like an oil well that will soon run dry and go still. Papers litter the surface, lines cut in hieroglyphics, that will yellow like old papyrus, will crumble in the hands like papyrus. There are books that bubble like alchemy in a small lab, where they boil metals and strange liquors to make gold. There was a clock that ticks off the seconds, each click Morse code played for my ear, where my time escapes here, where Kronos' long hand is reaching out. And this last poem is a poem I wrote for Elizabeth, her class last fall in poetry, and I want to thank her for all my help, for all her help and support in enjoying poetry again and writing poetry. I used to love to write it as a kid, and then I got scared and frightened and pretended I liked to draw more instead. So it's good to be back. It's also about cinema, and it's about war, and it's about the history of blood. It's called Blood in 5 Parts. Scene 1. Like men spilling from trenches, it oozes out of Edna Purveyance, who lies on the ground under a spotlight's caress, while Chaplin clutches her body. He feels it pool in his fingers, sticky and warm like greased mud. The gunman, an airplane's finger in the night, a sniper to snub out the heart spark. Lovers behind the lines speak in title cards. Chaplin gestures with tears. Enda grasps her mustard-filled head. I won't let you be buried on this street, tangled in barbed wire, eaten by rats. Scene 2. Bogart parachutes into Europe. Wind in the nose, thrown from his bicycle into smoke-bunkered beaches and pillboxes of the road's cement. The smell of machine gun oil in his face, his knee gashed like swastikas, odors of burnt flesh, a scar he carries inside to his bread-baking mother. Scene 3. Hear that? Hear that? VC in the bush, dripping with it. Man, the padded walls, just fucking dripping with it, Hopper says. Only he hears the sergeant's call for air support and the telephone lines outside his cell window. The white coats hawk a rolling thunder of optimism, but the halls chant some goddamn dove's descent. Chop, chop, chop of the gurney towards the electric buzz of shop therapy guitars for his skull. A Russian roulette of doctors screams like acid punji sticks. Scene 4. The director motions for action, and Hopkins pours more of the fake stuff from his victims onto the floors of the desert. A red sea of monster tanks and psychopathic tracers pursue the tortured, running, falling, throwing up hands. They flicker in the fire of death's highway. More of the fake stuff across the camera lens. This is the generation's Frankenstein. Cruise missiles provide the fill light. A-10s for the key. Scene 5. Maguire on a horse in dry mountains. The mane fills his mouth with the darkness of cave bunkers. And when the beast falls, he licks from the hole in its neck a trace of iron left by the Soviets. On the rocks, the Taliban fills his tongue, and in the air lingers the sour intrigue of a brother's climax.